I thank the Chairman and the Committee for taking up consideration of H.R. 3089, Grant Oversight and New Efficiency, or otherwise known as GONE Act, which is a bipartisan bill that I introduced with my fellow colleague from Michigan, Representative Brenda Lawrence. The GONE Act takes common sense steps to ensure a more effective use of taxpayer resources by improving the grant management process. The bill requires federal agencies to identify thousands of grant accounts that should be closed out and explain why they have not already been closed out. When a federal agency awards a grant, it is required to create an account through its payment management system to distribute funds to a grantee. After the grantee is finished with the project, or when a grant reaches the end of the grant award period, the grant account is identified as expired. The federal agency is then required to close out the account within 90 days of receiving all closeout documentation from the grant recipient. When an agency closes out a grant account, it essentially performs an audit to ensure grant funds were spent appropriately and to the terms of the grant award. The grant closeout process is a vital step to ensure taxpayer monies have been used effectively and for their intended purpose. It makes funds less susceptible to fraud, waste, and mismanagement, and may enable agencies to redirect resources to other projects. Unfortunately, the GAO has analyzed the grant closeout process and has found significant delays in the closeout process, resulting in costs to the taxpayer. At the time of the GAO's report, it identified more than $794 million in funding remaining in expired grant accounts. The GAO has also discovered that agencies were paying roughly $2 million in annual service fees to maintain grant accounts with $0 in them. The GONE Act seeks to address these long delays by requiring the heads of each agency to submit to Congress and the Secretary a report that lists each grant held by the agency and identify which ones needing to be closed out. The bill also requires each agency to report within a year on whether or not they have closed out their grants. A bipartisan companion bill has already been approved by our counterpart committee in the Senate, and we have worked closely with our colleagues in the Senate throughout this process. This is a common sense, good government bill that will improve the grant management process and help ensure taxpayer resources are not languishing in expired accounts or being wasted to maintain accounts with nothing in them. The amendment, in nature of a substitute, clarifies that agencies are to send their reports on grant closeouts to the Department of Health and Human Services, which will ultimately report on this information to Congress, rather than have each agency send its own report to Congress. The ANS also makes several other technical changes to clarify the intent of the bill. And so, Mr. Chairman, I encourage members of the committee to adopt the ANS and favorably report H.R. 3089. And I yield back.